When HOA Karen called 911 claiming I had bombs in my garage, I thought it was another one of her petty games. But the moment red and blue lights filled my driveway, and the governor himself stepped inside, I realized this wasn't a neighborly dispute. It was a setup to kill. I recently found myself staring down the barrels of police guns in my own garage, hands raised, heart hammering, wondering how the hell a quiet night fixing my Mustang had turned into a live crime scene. The flashing red and blue lights painted the inside of my garage like a nightmare disco. Every second felt like a countdown I couldn't stop. But the craziest part? The governor of our state was standing beside me, bleeding out on my concrete floor. And it all started because my HOA president, Karen, made a phone call. She said I had bombs. She said I was armed. She said I was a threat. She was lying. Let me rewind a bit. Before the chaos, before the shouting, before my name became a police radio code, everything was calm. My garage was my temple, clean, ordered, perfect. Every wrench hung exactly where it belonged. Black outlines drawn on the pegboard so nothing was ever out of place. The smell of oil and steel mixed with the faint scent of pine drifting in through the open door. That night, I was working on my pride and joy, a deep green '67 Mustang my dad left me. I'd been adjusting the carburetor, wiping my hands on the same red rag he once used. The rhythmic click of the wrench was the soundtrack of peace. The world outside might have been chaos, but in here, I was in control. Then, headlights cut across the driveway. Not just any headlights, these were low, steady, and too polished to belong to a neighbor. A black sedan rolled to a stop at the end of the drive. The kind of car that didn't show up without a purpose. Two men stepped out, suits crisp, movements sharp. I froze, the wrench still in my hand. One stayed by the car. The other walked toward the garage like he'd done this 1,000 times. He wasn't big, but he carried that quiet confidence that makes you stand straighter without realizing it. "Mr. Dunham?" he asked. "That's me," I said, cautious. He showed a badge. "Agent Peters, State Protection Detail. We need to speak privately." That one word, protection, made my pulse skip. He gestured toward the car. "The governor would like a word." For a second, I thought he was joking. The governor? Here? In my driveway? But when the back door opened, and Governor Thompson himself stepped out, real, tired, serious, I knew whatever this was, it wasn't small. We shook hands right there in the soft glow of my garage light. His grip was steady, but his eyes carried the weight of something big. "I read your file," he said quietly. "You were right about your HOA. What you uncovered. It's worse than we thought." My chest tightened. The folder I'd sent, the invoices, the fake permits, the altered maps, it had reached him. He believed me. For the first time in months, I felt hope. But that hope lasted all of 30 seconds, until a phone buzzed somewhere outside, and the distant echo of sirens began to rise in the night air. Agent Peters frowned. "You expecting company?" I wasn't. And as the sound grew louder, fast, urgent, I realized something terrible. Someone had made a call. And by the time those sirens stopped in my driveway, that someone's lie would turn my garage into a war zone. The night before everything went to hell, my life was perfectly ordinary. And that's what made it so easy to destroy it. I live in a quiet lakeside neighborhood. A postcard kind of place where everyone's lawn looks copy-pasted and the mailboxes match like soldiers in formation. You'd think it was peaceful. You'd think we were all friends. But underneath the smiles and neatly trimmed hedges was something else. Control, rules, and a woman named Karen Polson. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the HOA president, self-appointed guardian of aesthetics, property values, and everyone's personal business. She wore power like perfume, strong enough to choke anyone who got too close. For months, she'd been picking at me like a loose thread. A polite reminder about my garage door being open after 8 p.m. A concerned notice about the Mustang being an unregistered project vehicle. A printed list of acceptable exterior paint colors left in my mailbox. Highlighted that IT would have been funny if it wasn't so exhausting. But that night, I decided she wasn't going to ruin my peace. My garage was lit like a showroom. Everything in its place. The Mustang gleamed under the soft white lights. Green paint deep enough to swim in. I took a breath of that perfect mixture of gasoline, leather, and history. My dad's ghost lived in this car. When I turned a wrench, it was like shaking his hand again. The rest of the world, the HOA, Karen, her rules, it all disappeared in here. Tina, my wife, poked her head through the door connecting the kitchen to the garage. She was wearing one of my old flannels and holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You're out here again?" she teased. "Therapy's cheaper than counseling," I said. She smiled, then her face softened. "You sent those files, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, the state attorney's office, just like the agent said to." Tina stepped closer, setting the coffee on the workbench. "You really think they'll do something this time?" "They have to. Karen and that developer, what they've been doing with the HOA money, it's theft, plain and simple. And now I've got proof." She looked proud, but worried too. "Then we'd better lock the doors tonight. You're poking a hornet's nest." I laughed, but she wasn't wrong. Karen had friends, people who benefited from her little empire. She wasn't used to being challenged, and certainly not by someone like me. The truth is, I'd been suspicious for a while. The HOA dues kept going up, yet the maintenance got worse. Special assessments appeared out of nowhere, thousands of dollars supposedly for shoreline preservation. But no one ever saw any work done. Then I'd found the invoices, fake companies, repeated payments, all pointing to a developer named Richard Thorne, Karen's consultant. When I put it all together, I couldn't sleep for days. My gut told me to stay quiet. My conscience told me to accept, so I acted. That night, I was tightening the last bolt on the front wheel when a pair of headlights slid across the wall again. Not fast, just slow, deliberate. I turned, expecting a neighbor. Instead, it was Karen's white Lexus creeping past my driveway. She slowed down, staring straight at me. Her expression wasn't angry. It was calculating. She didn't wave. She didn't blink. She just looked. Then, the car rolled on. Disappearing down the street, I exhaled, shaking my head. "She's got cameras in her car. I swear," I muttered. Tina rolled her eyes. "Let her watch. You're not doing anything wrong." I wanted to believe that, but in a place where power comes from gossip, even the truth can be twisted. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I wiped my hands and answered. "Hello, Mr. Dunham?" A male voice, calm, official. "This is Agent Peters, State Protection Detail. The governor received your files. We'd like to meet tonight." Discreetly, my heart skipped. Tonight? Within the hour. He's on his way. I glanced at Tina. She read my face instantly. "This is it," she whispered. I didn't know then that it would include flashing lights, screaming officers, and a gunshot that would echo through every quiet cul-de-sac in this town. I just knew the truth was finally reaching someone who could do something about it, so I cleaned my hands, straightened the garage, and waited. When the black sedan pulled up, it was exactly on time. 2 agents. One stayed by the car, scanning the shadows. The other, Peters, approached with a quiet authority that made my spine stiffen. That he didn't waste words. "The governor will be joining us momentarily," he said. "He wants to hear directly from you." I remember the way the night air shifted then. Like the calm before a thunderstorm. I was about to expose one of the most corrupt neighborhood empires in the state. And somewhere, across the street, Karen Polson was watching every move I made. The calm was over. The storm was on its way. The sedan's headlights cut across my garage like 2 white blades before shutting off. For a moment, the world held its breath. I wiped my palms on the same red shop rag I'd used since my dad's time and tried to calm the nervous tremor in my hands. A door opened. A pair of shoes stepped out. Polished, black, government issue. Then another. The taller man approached first. "Mr. Dunham?" he said, his voice low but steady. "Yeah," I answered. "That's me." He showed me his badge. Agent Peters, State Protection Detail. That's Agent Cross with the car. "The governor will be joining us shortly." I blinked. "The governor himself?" He nodded once. "Your report wasn't small, sir. He thought it best to hear from you directly. No cameras, no leaks." He stepped inside my garage, scanning it the way cops do when they're memorizing every exit and every angle. His eyes landed on the Mustang. "Nice ride," he said. "Thanks, my dad's." He nodded approvingly, then lowered his voice. "You understand why this has to stay quiet?" "I do," I said. "The HOA's got their claws in city permits, zoning boards, even local law enforcement." I didn't know how deep it went until I started digging. The sound of another car door broke our focus. Governor Thompson stepped out, wearing a dark coat over a simple button-up shirt. No entourage, no press. He looked like a man who'd aged twice as fast as his term in office. He extended his hand. "Mr. Dunham, you've been busy." I shook it, careful not to smear the grease still clinging to my fingers. "I've been angry," I said. The governor smiled faintly. "Anger's good. Keeps people honest." He turned to his agents. "We're safe here." "Yes, sir. Perimeter's clear." They closed the garage door halfway, leaving just enough space for the night air to drift in. The governor walked toward my workbench, where the evidence folder sat like a loaded weapon. "This is it?" he asked. "All of it," I said. "Altered property maps, forged invoices, bank transfers. Karen Polson and a developer named Richard Thorne. They've been laundering HOA money into fake maintenance projects and funneling it through shell companies." The governor opened the folder, skimming through the papers with the quiet focus of a man used to bad news. "You understand what this means, Mr. Dunham?" "I understand I'm probably making enemies." He smiled slightly. "You already have." The conversation shifted into specifics. Figures, permits, names. Every document I'd collected told a story of theft disguised as civic duty. When he finished, the governor set the folder down. "You did good work," he said. "And you were right not to trust the local authorities. This goes far beyond your neighborhood. We've been tracking Thorne for years. We just couldn't prove anything until now." Hearing that, I felt a rare kind of relief. Months of paranoia and doubt finally had purpose. Then, just as the air began to lighten, Agent Cross's voice cut through the night. "Sir," he called from outside. "We've got incoming vehicles, fast." Peters instantly straightened. "Back up." Cross shook his head, eyes narrowing. "No sirens. Civilians, maybe 3 cars, heading this way." The governor looked at me. "You expecting anyone?" "No one." The 3 cars slowed, tires crunching against asphalt. One of them, a white SUV, stopped directly across the street. I didn't need a license plate to know whose it was. Karen. Through the tinted glass, I could see her silhouette, phone pressed to her ear, her other hand waving animatedly at the approaching patrol cars turning onto our street. "She's making a call?" I said quietly. Peter's jaw tightened. "To who?" I didn't answer. We all knew within seconds. The faint hum of engines gave way to something far worse. The rising scream of sirens. Agent Cross cursed under his breath. "They're coming hot." Governor Thompson looked to Peters. "Secure this location. No one moves until we figure out what she told them." But it was already too late. The first patrol car skidded to a stop at the base of my driveway. Floodlights flaring through the glare, I saw the outline of officers with weapons drawn. "This is 911 caller, right?" one of them shouted. "Reports of armed suspects. Possible explosives." Peters raised his badge, shouting, "State detail. Stand down." They didn't. The white SUV's door opened. Karen stepped out, her voice sharp and shrill as she pointed toward my garage. "That's him. He's got guns. He's dangerous." Her words carried over the sirens like a spark over gasoline. In that instant, I understood. This wasn't panic. It was precision. Karen had made her move, and she'd done it knowing exactly what would happen next. The sound of those sirens ripped through the neighborhood like a scream no one could silence. What had been a quiet cul-de-sac turned into a stage lit by red and blue strobes. Every neighbor's curtain twitched. Every porch light flicked on. Agent Peters stepped forward, shouting over the noise. "Everyone stay calm. Identify yourselves." But calm wasn't in the air anymore. 2 squad cars blocked my driveway. A third one angled sideways near Karen's lawn. lights reflecting off her pristine mailbox like a warning beacon. Officers poured out, hands gripping their sidearms, eyes darting between the governor, me, and the agents, and right there, at the center of it all, stood Karen Polson. Phone still in her hand, eyes blazing with righteous fear that she'd manufactured herself. "She's lying," I shouted, raising my hands. "There are no weapons. No bombs." "Sir, step away from the vehicle," one officer barked, weapon trained on me. Agent Peters tried again, louder. "State detail. You're interfering in a secure operation. Lower your weapons." But the officers didn't lower anything. Their radios crackled with dispatch chatter. "Caller reports armed suspect. Garage full of explosives. Possible hostage." Hostage. She'd added hostage. Karen clasped her arms, pretending to shiver. "He's unstable. He threatened everyone on the board. He said he'd blow up the HOA meeting next week." My blood boiled. "What are you talking about?" But she wasn't talking to me. She was performing for the cameras, the neighbors, the chaos. The governor, standing just behind me, took a step forward. "This is Governor Thompson," he said, voice firm but calm. "These men are state agents. There is no threat here." The nearest officer froze mid-step, recognition flickering across his face. "Governor, sir, we got a 911 report of—" "I know what you got," the governor interrupted, his voice cutting like steel. "And it's false. You're about to make a very big mistake. That should have been the end of it. But one thing about panic, it doesn't listen to authority. A flash of motion. One officer, younger, nervous, finger already trembling on the trigger. He slipped slightly on the patch of oil under the Mustang's rear tire. The movement was small, barely a twitch, but it was enough. The gun went off. The crack echoed down the street like thunder. I flinched as something hot and sharp hissed past my ear. The governor stumbled back, hand clutching his side. "Governor, down!" Agent Peters shouted, diving to catch him before he hit the concrete. Chaos exploded. Officers screamed conflicting orders. "Hold fire! Secure the target! Get EMS!" But the damage was done. The governor's blood pooled under the fluorescent garage lights, bright and unreal. Karen gasped dramatically, covering her mouth. "Oh my God! I told you he was dangerous." That single sentence ignited the fuse all over again. Another officer aimed his weapon at me. "Drop the wrench. Hands where I can see them." I was frozen, heart pounding, wrench still in my hand from earlier. For a second, I couldn't even move. Peter shouted again. "He's unarmed. He's helping us. Do not shoot." Then Tina's voice cut through the madness. She'd run out from the house, phone in hand, screaming, "Stop! Check the call log. Check the call log." She stood in front of me, blocking their aim, tears streaming down her face. "You're pointing guns at the wrong man." For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The sound of the governor's ragged breathing filled the space between us. The realization started to dawn on the officers. This wasn't a standoff. This was a setup. Agent Cross dragged a med kit from the car and pressed it to the governor's wound. Through and through, lower abdomen. "He's lucky. Get an ambulance." Peters yelled. One officer finally grabbed his radio, voice shaking. "We've got a confirmed friendly fire. Governor Thompson down." "Repeat. Governor down." Karen froze mid-act, her eyes wide. The moment the words "Governor down" hit the radio, her expression cracked like glass. She knew this was about to turn on her. The first ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, joining the chorus of chaos already tearing the night apart. I knelt beside Peters, pressing my hand against the gauze to help slow the bleeding. My gloves turned crimson. "He's going to make it," Peters muttered. "Just keep pressure." The governor's voice came weak but clear. "Record everything." And that was when Tina held up her phone. The 911 call log, the timestamps, the live police scanner, all of it on the screen. "Karen's number," she said quietly, staring straight at her. "This was your call." Karen backed away, shaking her head. I was trying to help. I didn't know." But nobody was listening anymore. The neighbors had gathered, cameras out, recording the entire scene. The story had changed in an instant. From a threat to an injustice, paramedics rushed in. The garage that once smelled of oil and peace now reeked of blood, fear, and betrayal. And as they lifted the governor onto the stretcher, I realized something I'd never forget. Karen didn't just lie to protect her power. She'd nearly killed a man to keep it. The garage looked like a battlefield. Lights flashing, radios crackling, officers shouting over one another. The smell of gasoline mixed with the copper scent of blood. Every second stretched, long and jagged, as if time itself refused to move forward. The governor was down, lying on the concrete floor between the Mustang's front wheels. Agent Peters had one hand clamped over the wound, the other waving at the officers. "Back up. Give us space. He's hit but alive." Outside, the neighborhood was chaos. Neighbors in pajamas, porch lights flickering on, the whine of ambulance sirens echoing off the lake. Somewhere in that blur of noise, Karen's voice kept cutting through, sharp and panicked, trying to rewrite the story she just caused. "I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. He's dangerous. You don't understand." She was performing again. Arms flailing, tears that weren't real, voice just loud enough to carry to every camera phone recording from across the street. But this time, no one believed her. Officer Ramirez, the one who fired the shot, stood frozen in the driveway, his gun still lowered, eyes wide with shock. His lips trembled as he whispered, I didn't mean he slipped." Peters barked orders like a soldier in a war zone. "Ramirez, you secure the perimeter. You two, get that ambulance closer. We move the governor now." I pressed my hand harder on the gauze, feeling the governor's shallow breaths under my palm. His face was pale but steady. "He'll make it," I said quietly, half to him, half to myself. He turned his head slightly, his voice barely a whisper. "Don't let her get away with it." Tina crouched beside me, trembling but focused. "Ambulance is 3 minutes out," she said, glancing at her phone. "But everyone's already live-streaming this. It's all over social media." "Good," I muttered. "Let the world see what she did." A medic finally burst through the crowd, kneeling beside us with a trauma kit. "We've got him," he said. "Keep pressure until I say." I nodded, stepping back as they worked. My hands were shaking, streaked red. Tina grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward the edge of the garage. "You need to wash off," she whispered. But I couldn't move. My eyes locked on Karen. She was standing on her lawn now, surrounded by 2 officers trying to calm her down. "He threatened me," she kept insisting. "You heard him. He was going to hurt people." Agent Peters turned, his voice like a whip. "Enough. You made a false report that almost killed a sitting governor." Karen's composure cracked. "No, he was..." But the officers weren't listening to her anymore. The story had shifted, and she wasn't the hero of it. Then the ambulance finally pulled up, red lights flashing over every face. They loaded the governor quickly, Peters climbing in beside him. Before the doors closed, he looked back at me. "You did the right thing, Mr. Dunham," he said. "Stay inside. We'll contact you soon." And then he was gone, swallowed by the flashing lights speeding toward the hospital. For a few seconds, the world went eerily quiet. The neighbors stayed at their windows, the police radios crackled low, and Karen just stood there in her perfect white sweater, staring at the blood-stained driveway. I stepped closer, voice low but steady. "You wanted me out of this neighborhood so bad, Karen. You almost buried someone else instead." Her eyes darted toward me, full of fear and defiance. "You don't know what you've done," she whispered. "You think this ends with me?" Then she turned and walked back toward her house, phone still in her hand. Tina came up beside me, her voice shaking. "She's not done. You saw that look. She's going to twist this again." "Not if we get ahead of her," I said. She frowned. "How?" "Proof," I said simply. "The call, the footage, everything. If the truth doesn't speak loud enough, we'll make sure everyone hears it." We went back inside. My hands were still trembling, and every sound outside, the sirens, the engines, even the buzz of porch lights, felt like a memory I didn't want. Tina sat at her computer, connecting the phone to our big TV. Her call's time-stamped, she said, typing fast. And the officer's body cams will show the governor alive before the shot. That's evidence. I nodded. Good. Because once he's stable, they're going to want answers. And she's already rehearsing her lies. Across the street, Karen's house glowed in the dark. The blinds were shut, but her shadow moved behind them. She wasn't crying anymore. She was pacing, plotting. I could feel it. Outside, a few reporters had already started gathering. The kind of vultures that smell scandal before the blood dries. The neighborhood that once bragged about peaceful living now looked like the set of a true crime documentary. Tina leaned back, sighing. You realize this is going to explode online by morning? I met her eyes. Good. Let it. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person who'd been silenced by someone like her. Someone who thought power meant immunity. As the night deepened and the last patrol car left, I stood in the doorway of my garage, staring at the faint red stains still marking the concrete. And I made a promise, when the sun came up, I'd make sure every single lie Karen Polson ever told burned under the light of truth. Morning came heavy, like the sky itself was hung over from the chaos of the night before. The sirens were gone, but their echo lived on in every quiet corner of the neighborhood. Yellow police tape fluttered lazily in the wind, stretching across my driveway like a scar that I hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the governor's face. The shock, the pain, the disbelief, as the bullet tore through him. Tina sat at the kitchen table, still in the same flannel from last night, scrolling through her laptop. The glow of the screen painted her face pale. It's everywhere, she said softly. Every news outlet, every platform. They're calling it the HOA shooting. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the window where the morning sun spilled over the yellow tape. They know Karen made the call? Not yet, she said. But give it time. The internet's already piecing things together. She turned the screen toward me. There I was, frozen mid-frame, standing in the garage, hands up. The governor on the ground behind me. Police lights, chaos, and a caption that read, "Local man caught in standoff gone wrong." They think you shot him, Tina said, her voice tight. Some of them think you're the suspect. I exhaled slowly. Then we fix it. She nodded, already opening the file she'd saved last night. The 9/11 audio log, the timestamps, the phone ID, it was all there. Proof that Karen's lie had started it all. Outside, a car door slammed. I peeked through the blinds and saw a familiar figure. Agent Peters. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, but his expression was focused. I opened the door before he could knock. He's okay? I asked. The governor's stable, Peters said. Surgery went well. He's conscious, already asking for you. Relief washed over me like cold water. But, Peters continued, stepping inside, this situation's about to explode. The police are panicking. The media's feeding on rumors. And your HOA president's already spinning a new story. Of course she is, I muttered. What's she saying? That you were running an illegal garage business, Peters said flatly. That the governor was here to investigate you. She's playing victim. Tina scoffed. Unbelievable. Peters rubbed his temples. I've seen dirty politics, but this woman, she's something else. The governor wants the truth out. Clean, clear, and fast. He's authorizing us to collect everything you've got. Tina handed him the flash drive. 911 call log, timestamp video feed, and a copy of the live bodycam stream from last night. I mirrored it all to the cloud before they locked the files. Peters raised an eyebrow. Smart woman. She's the reason we're not in cuffs right now, I said. He pocketed the drive. We'll push this to the state attorney before noon. Once it hits official channels, Karen's done. But even as he said it, I wasn't convinced. People like Karen didn't go down easily. They dragged everyone with them. As Peters left, I looked back toward the garage. Felt different now. The same place that once smelled of oil and peace now carried the scent of fear and betrayal. Tina came up beside me. You okay? Yeah, I lied. She looked at me for a long second, then said, Don't do anything stupid. I gave her a half-smile. Wouldn't dream of it. But I already knew what I was going to do by noon. The reporters had gathered like vultures outside the neighborhood gate. Every news van, every drone, every camera trained on the same White House at the end of the street. Karen's that I walked past them quietly, hoodie up, cap low. No one noticed me slip into the side yard. Through her window, I could see her pacing, her phone glued to her ear, her voice sharp. I'm telling you, he's dangerous. He threatened me. You can't believe that video? He edited it. She wasn't breaking. She was doubling down, so I gave her something she couldn't twist. I pulled out my phone, opened the app Tina had installed, and mirrored the live body cam feed to every local social platform. Unedited, raw, timestamped. The moment the video hit the net, the neighborhood froze. The footage showed everything. Karen's SUV, her 911 call, her lies about bombs, the officer slipping, the shot, the governor falling, and me, unarmed, hands up. There was no editing this truth. Within minutes, the comments started flooding in. She lied. That man saved the governor. Arrest her. I slipped the phone back in my pocket and walked home, the echo of Karen's voice fading behind me as reality closed in on her. When I got back, Tina was waiting at the door. You did it, didn't you? I nodded. Now the truth can't be buried. We stood there, silent for a moment, listening to the distant sound of sirens again. But this time, they weren't coming for me. That evening, the neighborhood was a different place. The HOA board had gone silent. Karen's house was dark, no visitors, no Lexus in the driveway. Tina leaned against the porch railing. Think she's hiding? She's realizing what happens when lies meet daylight, I said. The governor's office released an official statement later that night. The incident in Lakeshore community was the result of a false emergency report. No explosives, no threat. A full investigation is underway. The words hit the airwaves like a hammer. Karen Polson's name trended within the hour. Every homeowner in the neighborhood shared the same thought, that their self-appointed queen had finally fallen from her throne. And me? I stood in my garage again, staring at the old Mustang, at the dried stains on the floor, at the spot where it all went wrong. For the first time in a long time, the silence felt peaceful. That night, the neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath. No lawnmowers, no music, no small talk, just tension, thick and silent. Like the moment before a storm breaks, Karen's perfect little kingdom had gone dark. Her white Lexus was gone, her blinds closed, her porch light off for the first time in years. But her name was everywhere. TV, Twitter, Reddit, headlines screaming in bold fonts. HOA president under fire for false 911 call. Governor injured in neighborhood shooting. Every story came with that same video. My garage, the flashing lights, the shot, the governor going down. Each replay cut deeper, but it was necessary. Tina sat in front of the big screen, scrolling through hundreds of comments. They're destroying her online, she said quietly. Somebody found her HOA Facebook group. People are posting screenshots of her threatening homeowners, blackmailing them with fines. I didn't feel joy. Not yet. There was still work to do. Because I knew Karen wouldn't go quietly. Just after sunset, a black SUV rolled up in front of our house. This one didn't belong to her. It was state-issued, clean, tinted windows. Agent Peters stepped out again, flanked by a woman in a gray blazer with a badge clipped to her belt. Mr. and Mrs. Dunham, Peters said. This is Investigator Sarah Wexler from the governor's office. She shook our hands, firm and professional. Governor Thompson asked me to personally deliver a message. Peters handed me an envelope. Inside, a handwritten note. Truth always finds its way home. Thank you for helping it get there. G.T. I stared at it, feeling something heavy and light at the same time. Wexler continued. We're preparing a public statement tomorrow. The governor wants to make it clear that you were the one who exposed the corruption, not caused it. But we'll need your cooperation for one more thing. I glanced up. What's that? She nodded toward the living room. We need your help going public with everything. Documents, recordings, the full story. It needs to come from you. If Karen tries to twist the narrative again, we counter it with facts. Live, in front of everyone. Tina looked nervous. You mean like, on the news? Bigger than that, Peter said. We're setting up a live community broadcast tomorrow night. Open forum, HOA residents, press, everyone. It'll stream across all platforms. The thought made my stomach tighten. Facing the entire neighborhood, the cameras, and Karen herself, it sounded like walking back into the fire. But then I looked at the garage, at the spot where blood had stained the floor, at what her lies had cost. I'll do it, I said. The next evening came faster than I expected. The HOA's clubhouse, the same place where Karen had once ruled with her clipboard and fake smile, was now a makeshift press stage. Cameras lined the back wall. Neighbors filled the folding chairs. Reporters whispered into mics. And at the front, under harsh fluorescent lights, stood Karen Polson. Her once perfect hair was frizzed, her face pale but defiant. She wore a soft beige suit that probably took her an hour to choose, pretending this was just another meeting she could control. But this wasn't her stage anymore. Investigator Wexler stood beside her. Before we begin, I want to thank everyone for coming, she said, her voice echoing through the room. We're here tonight to address the events that occurred in Lakeshore Community 2 nights ago. The shooting, the false report, and the ongoing investigation. Karen stepped toward the microphone. I'd like to clarify that. Not yet, Wexler interrupted sharply. You'll have your turn, Mrs. Polson. The crowd murmured. Then Wexler turned to me. Mr. Dunham, please. I walked up slowly, feeling every eye in the room lock on me. My pulse thundered in my ears. Tina gave me a small nod from the front row. I took the microphone. I didn't plan to stand here tonight, I began. I'm not a politician or a hero. I'm just a man who wanted to fix his car and live in peace. But when peace gets threatened by lies, silence isn't an option. A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. Cameras clicked. I held up my phone and tapped the screen. Behind me, the giant projector flickered to life, playing the body cam footage again. The unedited version, clear and undeniable. Karen's voice filled the room. He's dangerous. He's got bombs. He's armed. Then the footage showed the governor stepping forward, calm, unarmed. Then the shot, the chaos, the blood. The silence in the room afterward was absolute. Wexler spoke. This call was made by Mrs. Polson, using her personal number. Our forensic team confirmed it. All eyes turned to Karen. Her lips trembled. I was scared. No, I said quietly, stepping forward. You were angry. You wanted control. And you almost killed a man to keep it. For the first time, Karen didn't respond. She just stood there, staring at the floor. Wexler continued. As of this evening, the state has filed charges for filing a false emergency report, obstruction of justice, and criminal negligence leading to injury. Gasps filled the room. Karen's knees buckled slightly. 2 officers moved forward, placing cuffs on her wrists. The cameras flashed like lightning. And just like that, the queen of the HOA fell, on live broadcast, in front of every person she'd ever tried to intimidate. As they let her out, Karen glanced back at me. For a split second, I saw something that wasn't anger or arrogance. It was fear, real, raw fear, and maybe regret. But it was too late. Wexler turned back to the crowd. To those who've been silenced, fined, or threatened, the governor's office will be conducting a full audit of this HOA and every connected entity. It's over. The audience erupted in applause. Loud, cathartic, full of relief. Tina grabbed my hand, eyes shining. It's done, she whispered. I looked at the cameras one last time and said, the truth always finds its way home, and this time it had. The next morning, the sun rose over Lakeshore like nothing had ever happened. Birds singing, sprinklers hissing, children biking to school. But beneath that calm, something was shifting. The whole state was talking. The news had changed overnight. What started as HOA shooting scandal had evolved into something bigger. Words like cover-up, fraud ring, and political corruption were now lighting up headlines. Tina stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, reading aloud. Governor's office uncovers massive HOA developer corruption network. They're calling it Operation White Fence. I smiled faintly. Nice name. She looked up. You started something, you know that? Before I could answer, a soft knock came at the door. When I opened it, Agent Peters was standing there again, this time in casual clothes, holding a folder. He looked more like an old friend than an agent. "Morning, Mr. Dunham," he said. "Governor Thompson would like to see you." The hospital was surrounded by reporters, security, and silence. Peters guided me past the press and up to a private floor. When the elevator doors opened, I saw Governor Thompson sitting upright in his bed, reading from a tablet, looking far stronger than he should after taking a bullet. He looked up and smiled. "Well, if it isn't the man who saved my hide." "Glad you're still breathing, Governor," I said. He chuckled. "Barely, thanks to Karen's version of Neighborhood Watch." I took the chair beside his bed. "Peters said you found something." He nodded and turned the tablet toward me. It displayed a web of connections, names, companies, and bank accounts. "At first, we thought Karen's false call was just panic or spite," he said. "But it wasn't. She was part of something. Richard Thorne, that developer you mentioned, he's not just building houses. He's laundering campaign funds, bribing local boards, even buying influence at the county level. Karen was his front line, keeping homeowners silent, funneling HOA fees into his shell accounts." I frowned. "So the HOA was a money pipeline." "Exactly. And your evidence blew the lid off it." He pointed to one name near the top of the chart. "Here's where it gets interesting, Deputy Commissioner Briggs. He's been approving Thorne's zoning expansions for years. Every time a homeowner complained, Karen filed a nuisance report or slapped them with fines until they gave up. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She was silencing witnesses." My stomach turned. "And the night of the shooting?" "Briggs panicked," the governor said. "Thorne told Karen to create chaos, to shut down any meeting that could expose the connection. She didn't expect me to be there in person. When she made that call, it wasn't a mistake. It was strategy." Tina's voice echoed in my head from the night before. "She's not done. She's planning something." I clenched my fists. "She tried to kill two problems with one lie." The governor nodded slowly. "And it almost worked." He leaned back, exhaling. "But thanks to you, she'll be facing charges alongside half her board. We've already frozen Thorne's assets. The FBI's stepping in." I sat there in stunned silence for a moment. This whole time, I'd thought I was just fighting a petty, power-hungry neighbor. I hadn't realized I was standing in the middle of a state-level crime syndicate. The governor looked out the window. "Truth is, I should have acted sooner. But sometimes it takes someone outside the system to show how rotten it's become." I met his eyes. "I wasn't looking to be a hero." "You weren't," he said with a smile. "You were looking for peace. And that's what made you dangerous to them." Later that day, Peters drove me home. The neighborhood was buzzing with whispers again. But this time, the tone had changed as I stepped out of the car. I saw a few neighbors across the street. People who'd avoided me for months, now giving hesitant waves. Mrs. Lyle, the elderly widow from 2 houses down, came over holding a tin of cookies. "I'm sorry, son," she said softly. "I never believed you were the bad one. We were all just scared of her." I smiled weakly. "Fear's a powerful leash." She nodded. "Not anymore." I thanked her and walked back inside, the weight of the last few days finally catching up with me. Tina met me at the door, her expression a mix of pride and relief. "She called you dangerous," she said. "Now look. She's the face of state corruption." I chuckled. "Yeah, well, I'd rather be dangerous than dishonest." We both laughed, a real laugh this time. That evening, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You did good, but stay alert. Thorne's not done yet." Peter's eye read it twice, because deep down I knew he was right. People like Thorne didn't vanish quietly. They regrouped. They waited as the sun dipped behind the lake. I stood in the garage again. Tools hung neatly, Mustang polished, everything where it belonged. The silence felt like closure, but I could still feel the tremor of unfinished business beneath it. Karen was gone. But Thorne, the man she worked for, was still out there. And if he came for me next, I'd be ready. Because this time I wasn't just defending my garage. I was defending the truth. The following week, the world watched as the story of our small neighborhood became national news. It was everywhere, on every TV, in every feed, replayed until even the reporters started to sound stunned by their own words. Massive HOA corruption ring exposed. Governor's recovery leads to criminal sweep. Local man's evidence triggers state-level investigation. The headlines barely scratched the surface of what was really happening. Because what began with a single false 911 call had exploded into a full-scale operation. At sunrise. Black SUVs rolled through Lakeshore's front gate like an army. FBI jackets glinted in the morning light. Agents moved with calm precision, knocking on doors, presenting warrants, collecting files. Tina stood beside me on the porch, coffee mug in hand, eyes wide. "It's really happening," she whispered. Across the street, the HOA clubhouse, once Karen's personal throne room, was surrounded by agents. They carried out boxes of paperwork, computer drives, even a shredder that was still warm that I could see our neighbors gathering quietly at the edge of their lawns, whispering, recording on their phones, trying to process what they were seeing. Then came the moment nobody expected. Richard Thorne himself, in a gray suit, escorted out in handcuffs. The man who once hid behind contracts and shell companies now looked smaller than ever. He glanced around, face pale, jaw tight, the illusion of power gone. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Thorne, any comment on the charges?" He didn't answer, just lowered his head and kept walking. Peters followed behind, clipboard in hand, giving me a subtle nod as they passed. "Guess that's our closure," Tina said, and I shook my head. Not yet. Because there was still one more person who needed to face what she'd done. Karen's arrest wasn't public. Not at first. The governor's office wanted to avoid a spectacle. But someone leaked the footage anyway. The clip went viral within hours. Karen Pohl's son, HOA president, being led out of a county detention center in an orange jumpsuit, wrists cuffed, hair a tangled mess. Her once perfect poise gone. The caption beneath every repost read the same, "Karen finally meets karma." I didn't enjoy seeing her humiliated. Not exactly. What I felt was quieter. Like justice settling into its rightful place. For months, she'd ruled through fear and manipulation, believing no one could touch her. Now, she was just another name in a long list of people who thought they were above consequence. That afternoon, Governor Thompson held a press conference. His first since leaving the hospital. He stood strong, his side bandaged but his presence commanding. The cameras loved him, but this time, he didn't use the moment for politics. "This tragedy began with a lie," he said. "A single false call that nearly took a life. But thanks to one man's persistence, that lie became the thread that unraveled corruption across our communities. We owe our thanks to Mr. Dunham, and to every citizen who refuses to stay silent when something isn't right." Hearing that live on national TV didn't feel real. Tina grabbed my hand, tears welling up. "That's you," she said softly. I shook my head. "It's us." Days turned into weeks. The investigations expanded beyond Lakeshore. Dozens of HOA boards across the state were audited. Fraudulent development permits vanished overnight. The ripple effect was bigger than anyone had expected. As for our neighborhood, something strange happened. People started talking again, really talking. The fences that once divided us seemed lower. Kids played in the cul-de-sac without anyone filing noise complaints. The air felt lighter, free of fear. Even the HOA board was rebuilt. New members, open meetings, no hidden agendas. And for the first time since I'd moved here, Lakeshore actually felt like a community point. One evening, a knock came at the door. When I opened it, Governor Thompson was standing there. No press, no cameras, just him and Peters. "Thought I'd deliver this in person," the governor said, handing me a small box. Inside was a polished brass plaque. "For integrity in the face of corruption," presented to James Dunham. I stared at it, speechless. "It's not official," the governor said with a smile. But it's honest. I laughed quietly. That's good enough for me. He looked around the garage, eyes landing on the Mustang. You ever think about running for HOA president? I raised an eyebrow. I think I've had enough of that title for one lifetime. We all laughed. Peters checked his watch. Governor, we should go. You've got that town hall at 7. The governor shook my hand firmly. Take care of this place, James. People like you keep the system honest. And with that, he left, the sound of his footsteps fading down the driveway. Later that night, I stood alone in the garage again. The scent of oil, metal, and calm filled the air. I ran my hand over the Mustang's hood, watching the light dance across the green paint. This space had seen everything: peace, chaos, blood, and truth. Tina walked in, leaning against the doorframe. You know, you never did fix that carburetor, she said. I smiled. Yeah, maybe it's time. She came closer, wrapping her arms around me. You did good, James. You gave this neighborhood its soul back. I kissed her forehead, resting my chin against her hair. No, I whispered. We did. Outside, the wind carried faint laughter from the houses down the street. The same neighborhood that once feared the truth now thrived because of it. And as the night settled in, I realized something simple and true. Peace doesn't mean silence. It means justice has finally been heard. Tob continued. Months passed. The chaos faded like an old photograph, its edges curling into memory. Lakeshore returned to its postcard perfection. But this time, the peace felt earned, not imposed. The HOA was rebuilt from the ground up. Honest people. Transparent rules. No more secret votes or midnight fines. The fences that once divided neighbors now framed shared gardens. The same people who once whispered rumors now hosted block parties. The silence that used to feel suffocating had turned into something beautiful. Quiet, not because of fear, but because of contentment. The storm was over. I was in the garage again that morning, a cup of coffee on the bench beside me, the soft hum of a classic rock station filling the air. The Mustang gleamed brighter than ever. The carburetor, finally tuned perfectly, purred like a heartbeat. Tina walked in, her hair tied up, a faint smile on her face. She sounds happy, she said, meaning the car. She is, I replied, running my hand across the hood. Feels like Dad's here again. She leaned against the doorframe. You know, it's funny. Everything started right here in this garage. And somehow, everything ended here too. Yeah, I said softly. Full circle. I looked around at the walls, each wrench, each tool, every mark on the floor. This wasn't just a workspace anymore. It was a witness. It had seen the truth tear through lies, watched justice fall hard and fast, and now stood as proof that peace can survive anything, if you fight for it. A knock echoed at the door. I wiped my hands and opened it. It was Peters. This time in jeans and a baseball cap, holding a cardboard box. You planning on staying out of trouble now? He asked with a grin. Trying my best. He stepped inside, placing the box on the workbench. These are for you. From the governor. Inside were framed photos. One of the governor shaking my hand, another of the Mustang in the background under the garage lights, and a small metal badge engraved with 2 words, Civic Honor. Peters nodded toward it. Governor said it's not official, but it's from the heart. I smiled. Tell him it means more than the title ever could. He leaned against the wall, glancing around. You ever going to sell this car? Never. Didn't think so. He smirked. It's got too much history in it now. We shared a quiet laugh before he clapped me on the shoulder. You did good, Dunham. Not everyone would have stood their ground like you did. Wasn't about standing, I said. It was about not backing down. He nodded approvingly. Keep it that way. Then, as he walked out, he paused at the door. Oh, and the governor said something about a job opening. Oversight Advisory Board. Think about it. Government work? I said, pretending to wince. After all this? He laughed. Hey, someone's got to keep them honest. That evening, Tina and I sat on the porch. The lake shimmered gold under the setting sun. Kids rode bikes down the street, laughter echoing in the distance. The air smelled like barbecue in summer. "You ever think about moving?" she asked quietly. That I shook my head. This place saw the worst of people, but it also showed me the best. "I'm not running from that." She smiled. "Good, because she gestured around us, "this finally feels like home." We sat there in silence for a while, watching the sun dip lower. When the first stars appeared, I glanced at the garage. The door was open, light spilling out across the driveway. Inside, the Mustang waited patiently. As if it knew something I didn't. I stood up. "Be right back." Inside, I grabbed a rag and started wiping down the hood. Not because it needed it, but because it felt right. Every swipe erased a little more of the chaos that once stained this place. Then, out of habit, I looked up at the pegboard, the neat outline of tools, the order, the calm, and smiled. The truth had cost me sleepless nights, danger, fear. But it had also given me something no one could take away again. Peace built on honesty. Tina stepped in quietly behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "Still can't stay away from this car, huh?" "Guess not," I said. "It's where everything makes sense." She rested her chin on my shoulder. "So what happens now, Mr. Hero of the HOA?" I laughed softly. "Now, I fix what's broken and enjoy what isn't." Outside, a gentle breeze rustled the trees. The neighborhood lights shimmered against the lake, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was no siren, no shouting, no fear. Just life moving forward. I turned off the radio, and for a moment, the silence was perfect. Then I whispered to the empty garage, more to myself than anyone else. "Some people think peace is quiet, but peace is when truth finally gets to breathe." I shut the garage door, one slow pull at a time, the sound echoing softly through the night. And for the first time since all this began, it didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like freedom.